Now it is time to transfer this configuration to the PLC. If your PLC is brand new out the box, it has the CPU, but then it cannot recognize all these other modules that you have connected to it. So when you download this config file to the CPU will then be able to identify all these other modules that you have in your physical setup. So then now we need to transfer or download this configuration to our physical PLC, which then brings us to the connection interface, which was the second section of PLC theory. In this case, since we are on the programming software, we're gonna set up the connection interface in software. So at this point, when you're doing this, your PLC needs to be physically connected to the engineering workstation, whether it's serial, USB, or Ethernet. For the sake of neatness, I'm just gonna close up the configuration because we've seen how it looks like. All these other sections don't have anything currently in the PLC project because we haven't done anything. We're only focusing on the configuration. So now let us set up our communication interface. Assuming that depending on whatever physical interface you're using, you have plugged in the correct cable between the PLC and the engineering workstation. So to do that, for this particular programming software, you're gonna go up here to PLC and then you're gonna say set address. Now this is the form of communication interface setup system or window that this software has for Schneider PLCs. So remember I said that the first thing that you always need to set up, which is always going to be common amongst most PLC softwares, is that you need to set up the interface, or here in this case it is called the media. By clicking on this drop down, you can see the different types of media interfaces or the connection interfaces that are available for this particular PLC. So the top three that you see here in this case are derivation of Modbus protocols, which fall under serial, depending on the technology of serial communication that you are using. If you're using serial, you're gonna click on the relevant one that you are using between these three. And then we have your TCP/IP as well as your USB. I'm not sure about what this Unity W01 stands for. I'm pretty sure that it's something that's specific for this Unity software. Anyway, we have USB, which is available, and this is a connection interface that we spoke about in one of our previous videos. Okay, so if you are choosing serial or any of these serial connections here at the top, you then need to set up addressing, which is the second part that is always there that you need to set up when you're doing your communication interface. So then with serial communication or with serial interfaces, they work in node numbers. So then you need to select the node number at which you have your PLC connected. So if your PLC on the serial network is at node 4 or node 1 or however it is, if you're using serial, usually your engineering workstation will take the address number of 0 or 1 depending on how the addressing numbering starts on that particular serial network, and then your PLC will then either take 1 or 2, again depending on how the node numbers or addressing works for that particular serial connection or communication. So then the next one that we also spoke about was USB. If you're using USB, most likely you don't have to specify anything under addressing, but stand to be corrected depending on the software that you are using. If your engineering workstation can pick up the PLC on device manager, then you are good to go and you can connect with the PLC. Then the other one that we spoke about was Ethernet. In this case, it would be TCP/IP. Now, if you've selected TCP/IP, you then need to specify the IP address of your PLC. So again, this will be the IP address that is set physically on your PLC, whether it's in the CPU or the PLC communication card. Here, you'll then enter your IP address of the PLC, which is going to be whatever the IP address that you have on your PLC. As I mentioned before, that the media and address are common in most PLC programming softwares. You definitely have to specify the media and address. Then depending on the software that you are using, it can then come with all these other nice features, like for instance this one has communication parameters, whether it's USB or serial. You can then configure those communication parameters. For the time that I've had to use Unity PLCs, I haven't had to specify much on communication parameters. I just left it the way that it was. The one thing that I like about setting up the communication interface in UnityPro is that it has this test connection button here. So you can click this button to verify that the communication between your engineering workstation and the PLC is working fine, rather than finding out only when you are trying to download the config to the PLC. Because currently my engineering workstation is not connected to a physical PLC because I don't have one, it's very expensive, I'm going to be downloading my PLC configuration to a PLC simulator. PLC simulator means that this is going to be a simulation PLC that is just running on my engineering workstation. It allows me to run my project or program as if I am connected to a physical PLC, but obviously there are limitations when you are running a simulation. But if I had a physical PLC, I would then write this configuration to that PLC. So then I've selected simulator here, and this is the IP address of the simulator that I'm using.